And we're going to start with Tilamat al-Quran. So young man here to do that.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى أرأيت الذي ينهى عبدا إذا صلى أرأيت إن كذب على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى صدق الله العظيم. Read, O Prophet, in the name of your Lord who created humans from the clinging cloth. Read, and your Lord is the most gracious, who taught you by the pen, taught humanity what they knew not. Most certainly one exceeds all bounds. Once they think they are self-sufficient, but surely to your Lord is the return of all.
Again. You okay?
Yeah.
I'm delighted to welcome you all. A lot of you have questions, and one basic question is why you're here. Soon you're going to find out. But before that, I have a couple announcements to make. You can hear me, there is some noise coming.
There's a lot of bass. The voice is not very clear.
Voice is not very clear. Where is the
साउंड थोड़ी सी बड़ी होनी चाहिए.
Okay, we'll have to find the person who can do it. First of all, I'm happy to share with you the news of the publication of Professor Abdul-Jabbar's book, Not of an Age, but of All Time, Revolutionary Humanism in Iqbal, Manto and Fab. It's available on Amazon, and there are some flyers on the corner of this table here that will tell you about the book. I had requested him to bring some copies of the book, but he doesn't seem to have any at this point. So Amazon would be the place. The flyer is there. I would encourage you to take a look at that, please. Anyone here that is familiar with the sound system? Okay. My dear friend from India, Muhammad Ali Naqvi Sahab, who happens to be the nephew of famous artist Sattar, he did a surprise for us, and he has brought many of his paintings that are displayed here for your pleasure. If anybody wants to buy them, that is also possible. Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing it. Before I talk about the program itself, there's going to be a question and answer session right after their speeches, and if there's anything left that is still a mystery for you, I would encourage you to ask questions. The whole idea of inviting them here, number one, is to know what this organization is about. It's known as Center for Muslim Experience in the United States of America. And more, they'll talk about it, but there will be question and answer session afterwards. I would also like to thank two very special people. And they are the one is Zulki Khan Sahab, and the other one you know, Sarwar Bhai. Both of them very generously and kindly sponsored this event for you. So I'm personally thankful to them for doing that. So you are our guests here. You are their guests actually, because they are the ones who have paid for it. And this is an introductory session. I really like for all of us to focus and learn what this is about, and then look at ourselves and see what kind of skill sets we have and how can we individually and collectively create a partnership with them, and then together we can create a much larger organization that would influence. And I will talk a little bit in very simple terms about this. One more thing I wanted to say before I get in there. I had requested a lot of friends to bring children. And some have. The others either didn't remember or the children refused to come. Whatever the case may be, I would beg all of you, as a parent myself and a grandparent of 8, mashallah, that one of the biggest mistakes we have made, we, my generation, and people are like, the door so we can at least shut some voice. It is extremely important. We know that we created our children here. They didn't come from skies. We're the reasons they exist. And because they exist, and we are getting older, not all of us, but people of my generation. And so one question we have to ask ourselves, what kind of society are we leaving for them? That is a question that we must ask ourselves every day. And because of that, the answer is not a very pleasing one. So it is still time that we involve our children in everything we do and everything that they can help us with. Our children are the leaders of tomorrow, but as parents, it is our responsibility to bring them to that leadership role. They're going to need coaching from us. That doesn't mean we take over. That's another problem we have in my generation. that we think that we're the only smart people and the children don't know anything. It's just the opposite. Actually, the children are much smarter, much more intelligent. They're born here. They know the system much better than we do. We'll ever do. So it is really, really, I can't emphasize enough to involve our children in the affairs. We need to become part of the system. We can't sit home, not take part of the system, and then complain that we're not considered. In order to be considered, we need to become part of that. And it is very important. I'm so happy that these two wonderful people have created this organization. And from the day I learned about this organization, it has made me so happy that even though I was very ill, it just gave me the strength to come over here and at least do this event, so I can introduce them to my extended family in California. And I thank you once again, because you are my family. I've lived a long time in California, and a lot of you don't know why you're here, but you're here. And I thank God for that, because that really is a compliment. And I love you guys with all my heart. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Professor Chad Haines to start and tell us about what this organization is all about. Please remember, there's going to be question and answer. Be ready for your questions, but first, listen to them. So please welcome them very warmly with me, and let's applaud. And welcome Chad Haines. Thank you, sir.
Actually, let's give an applause to Kashi-san. We're deeply grateful to Tashi-san for inviting us here, including us and his family. We're deeply touched by his generosity and support that he's shown us over this past year as we built up this Center of Muslim Experience in the U.S., and we'll get into some of those details in a little bit. But I also want to take this moment to thank many of you, and particularly Zulfikar, for his generous support in providing this lunch, and Sarat Bhai for providing this space. And there are many of you in this community who we've actually had discussions with before, who've inspired us and supported us from day one. And about a year ago, when we really had very little idea of what this center was really about, we had a series of conversations with a number of people who blindly supported us, both intellectually with their ideas, but also... Okay, sorry. And who supported us both with their ideas as well as financially. And so we want to thank those individuals particularly. Sorry. Okay. See, I'm not used to speaking to a mic. In my class, I have 150 students, but somehow the room, I don't have to use a mic. So it's a lot easier to sort of speak to an auditorium, I think, than in here. But so forgive me if you can't hear me. And if you can't hear me or things are clear, please raise your hand and I'll try to adjust the mic again. But as I said, there's so many people, not just here in the Bay. Yeah. Not just here in the Bay Area, but around the country that we've reached out to and have been so kind in their support. But this center really came about, there are a variety of sort of trajectories about it, but in many ways it's encapsulated in sort of a story I'd like to relate to you. One of our students, a graduate student actually at Arizona State University, recently shared with us a story of her experience. As a graduate student in bioengineering, she's required to take a sort of required first-year course. When she walked into the classroom of about 70 students, of those 70, 2 were women. Of those 2, 1 wore hijab, and that was herself. She felt highly intimidated, out of place, and a little concerned about how people would read her as a Muslim woman. And to make her situation worse is she had nobody to turn to, no mentor, no faculty member that sort of related to her experience, to her understanding. of what was happening and what she was potentially sort of going through as a young Muslim woman starting out her career, her academic career. Now that sort of experience of being alone, of being unsure of how others are going to read you is something I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have experienced at one time in your life. As a white American convert to Islam, it's something I don't experience personally in the same way. Yet I've seen it and heard it in so many ways within the university, within academia, of how Islam and Muslims are misrepresented or talked about, even amongst my colleagues who have PhDs, who've studied these issues, the way they simplify and homogenize and singularize the Muslim story and Muslim understanding, how they compartmentalize our knowledge as Muslims as something sort of distinct and different, where their knowledge as Western Christians is something privileged and universalized. And I'm really tired. I'm tired of these kind of experiences. I'm tired of having to explain on Fridays, as many of you do in your workplaces, to explain why you're taking a long lunch to go for prayers. Or during Ramadan every year to explain over and over again why you're fasting and why you cannot have that cup of tea or whatever with your colleagues during break. And I'm sure there are many positive stories too. There are many people amongst our neighbors and others and colleagues and friends and family who are really curious about who we are and are learning and are gauging. And so we become those sort of that trajectory. We become that symbol of them, that ability for them to sort of expand their own horizon. But how do we build upon that? How do we expand that story so it becomes more natural? And that is sort of where we started this idea, this center. We call the center Center of Muslim Experience in the U.S. Its acronym is CME-US. See me as us. See me, okay, is the idea. And so that's really what's driving us. And we hope that through some of the experiences that we've had as we develop this center that we'd like to share with you now, that we have this opportunity to sort of engage with you and learn from you your own experiences and build this up, as Tashi said, collaboratively. For that is our objective. It's not just about us. It's not just about ASU. It's about all of us as Muslims around the country in every corner, big city, small town, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, Southwest, Southeast, in every corner, coming together as a community, speaking up and allowing our voices to be heard. So I want to just take a moment to introduce myself as well. As you know, I'm Chad Haines. I'm a professor actually of religious studies, though my PhD is in cultural anthropology. And I undertook, actually my original research was conducted in Pakistan. And I wrote a book called Nation, Territory, and Globalization in Pakistan, a very sort of grand title. But it was really a kind of a history of northern Pakistan. And I used a very marginal place along the border with China. And that's part of, in a sense, depending on what side of the border you are on, I guess, but Pakistan-administered Kashmir, the Gilgit-Hunza area. But I used that as a reflection of how marginal communities organize and the impacts of globalization on them. And so my work since then has been really focused on marginal communities around the world. I've done work in various cities. I lived in Cairo as a professor at American University in Cairo for a number of years. And at that opportunity, I was able to undertake research actually in some of their, I guess the Kachiabadis of Cairo, and work with the communities there. It's very rewarding to see how people work together and come together despite the oppressions, despite the economic sort of oppression, despite the political oppressions, that the ways in which people themselves organized and did things and accomplished things, but they could only do it when they did it together. And I think, and as I said, that is one of the themes of our center. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce my colleague in this, my partner, and my wife, Yasmin Saikia.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Lovely to see so many of you again this afternoon after yesterday's celebration of Sir Syed Day here. It's indeed a great opportunity for both Chad and me to be here because Tashi Saab was so gracious to invite us and you were so kind to take your Sunday afternoon to spend with us. We are deeply indebted to you for it and we hope that this is not the first and only time that we will see you more often, not just here, but also in Arizona. I am originally from Assam in India. I went to Aligarh as a class 11 student, finished my master's from there, and then came to the US to study American history. And I did a master's in American history and even got actually an award for writing the best thesis, master's thesis, but it depressed me because I studied race relations and I found that even though you could climb up the social ladder as far as income and finance, you could not really become part of the accepted, established white order, particularly for black people. I gave that up, saying I could never question and be critically questioning the American historical scenario. So I returned back to studying South Asia and studied India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. I did my PhD from University of Wisconsin in Madison, joined University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, for several years and taught there for several years as a historian. But when I was doing that work, I realized that you could not study the history of South Asia. We go around calling here history of South Asia, but what they mean is history of India. Very, very few people study Pakistan and Bangladesh. So I said, what kind of history can one write if one took off those borders and maps out of the scenario and wrote a subcontinental story? That took me to studying violence and how violence has actually divided the people of the subcontinent into three groups. And I wrote a book called Women, War and the Making of Bangladesh, Remembering 1971, that took me to Pakistan, Bangladesh and India. It was this book that made me move to Arizona State University. They offered me a position as a peace scholar, an endowed job, endowed chair as a peace studies scholar, to study history from the position of, can we think of history as a site of peace rather than a site of divisions and conflict. I've been doing this for the last 13 years. Chad and I have been writing several books. We wrote 3 books on peace together. One is called Women, Islam and Peace in the Muslim World. The second book is called People's Peace. And the newest book that is coming out next year is called On Othering. So it is while we were finishing this project on peace, we started thinking, what next? Are we all going to keep talking of othering and othering others into others? Rather, can we think of something different? And that's when we started thinking about this center of Muslim experience. We just had an idea. We thought we were going to do research on this question, that where do the Muslims belong in America? But then an incident happened in Arizona State University in September 2021 when there was a desecration of the Quran in the campus. And so we went to the dean of our section in humanities and asked him, what does this university plan to do for Muslim students at ASU? Because here you have somebody walking into the campus, desecrating a Quran and kind of threatening students, ASU students who come from all over the world, by the way, and I'll tell you a little more about it, that they don't belong here. The dean said, why don't you do a center? I'm just an old-fashioned historian who was thinking of peace and medieval India and all of that kind of stuff. I was not thinking of associations and centers. And I'm like, what do you do? But then the more we kept thinking about it, the more it started to take shape, because everywhere around us, there were so many issues that one had to deal with, as Chad said, with misrepresentation, with so many of you know the term Islamophobia, which is like the fear of Islam because it's supported by a political force, they think, or something that nowadays has become more dominant called Islamomesia, which is fear of Muslims, an irrational fear of Muslims. So we started thinking, we need to do something. Now, I'm a kind of person who sort of absorbs a lot of things from everywhere around me. I write history in which everyday people's lives are actually accounted. I was going for a haircut, and the woman who cut my hair told me this absolutely irrational story about Muslims. She said, you know, Yasmin, there are all these people coming from across the border with lots of children. I'm like, really? Yeah, there are lots of children, and they're like coming with 20 children or something. They're coming maybe from Afghanistan, they're all Muslims, and they're refugees, she says. I said, 20 kids? She said, yes, you know, they sell their children because they are not like us. I was like, wow, that's a very elaborate story to say Muslims are selling children and they're coming here to the US as refugees. The next part of the story was even more curious. She tells me that these refugees are taking all the benefits that the homeless people deserve in our country. So now you have Muslim refugees, children taking benefits, and we, the Americans, according to her, this white woman, we are left on the lurch. So, and you remember the scene in ASU that there is desecration of the Quran. So we put our heads together. We started talking to several people that we have been given this mandate, let's put it this way, by the university to do something for Muslim students, and we would like to start a center of Muslim experience. Would you help us? And lots of people stepped up and said, we are there for you guys to start the center. So that is the origin of this center in some way, that is still in the point of formation. It's just 1 year old. We just started it in 2022, and it is still in the point of formation. And because it is in the point of formation, it gives us this opportunity today to invite you to also become part of it in whatever way you want to be, particularly with your skill sets. And in this Bay Area, since we know that there are lots of Muslims. You already know that America has about, the statistic says that there is around 3 to 4 million Muslims. It's one of the fastest growing religions in this country. The youth population is the largest. It's around 60% of the 3 to 4 million are actually youth. And so we need to focus on the future which is, like, as I said, our students, your kids, your grandkids. That is what we are aiming to actually address and be able to provide a certain kind of pathway that will make them more confident and certain that this country is as much theirs as it is of anybody else's. So the center's work is really to transform the image of Muslims from that Islamophobic or Islamomisia kind of irrational fear of Muslims to something positive. Can they see us just as normal people, as just human beings? They may not respect us. We're not seeking. It'll be great if they respect us. But even if they cannot respect us, can they just accept that we live here and we are contributing to this place, and also acknowledge the accomplishments? There are lots of accomplishments of Muslims that we have started actually documenting, and we'll be putting it together as we keep developing this center. So that is the approach of the center, is to change the narrative of Muslim. The change cannot happen in one place. It has to happen across the United States and hopefully globally. Now, what have we done in 1 year? You may ask, what have you guys been doing from 2022 to now? How are you addressing the youth? Because that's really our target. Our target is looking at how we can enable the youth, the young people between the age group of, say, 12 to 30 to really claim America as their home and be standing here with dignity and firmness, steadfastness, be a Muslim and be American. So what have we been doing? We have started a three-prong approach. Our three-prong approach is student youth development in the university, engaging them. The second is community outreach, and the third is research and creating global network. The pictures that you see on the left side, the two gentlemen there, they're two refugees that we have adopted at our center. They are from Afghanistan, a father and son couple. The father is Dr. Asifi, who was well known back in Afghanistan for saving the paintings. Today you have Sadakin's paintings here, which are well known, but Dr. Asifi basically saved the paintings before the Taliban came in, and it was for that he has been recognized actually in the United States. If you look up, there's in Smithsonian, there's a lot of writing on Dr. Asifi. He came to us at the center without anything. So we have provided a space for him to do a lot of art on Muslim life in the United States. You will see some of that later on as you will peruse our website. His son, Najib, had studied in India. He came just last year with his wife, or this year with his wife and his newborn kid. And Najib is doing oral history with Afghan refugees in the Valley area. He's learning a lot, and again we will be putting up his videos and his oral interviews online that you can access at some point after we translate and transcribe it. The two young students on the right are Simra Mahin and Umaira Ali. Both of them are freshman students. They are working with us. We have got a small fellowship from the dean for them to do research. They're looking into Muslim community involvement in the Valley, how Muslims are creating cultural diversity, financial well-being, economic ventures, student organization, youth involvement. And there are 3 other young students who are volunteering at the center and doing different kind of work. We don't have the pictures there. There'll be too many pictures. The community engagement, the community outreach that we did last year and this year, one was to put up the Ramadan lights, the crescent moon light during Ramadan in 2023. And in Tempe, there is a little mountain called A Mountain. And on the A Mountain, every year, there is the Christmas symbols, and during Hanukkah, the menorah, the Jewish symbol. There has never been anything about Muslims for the public to know that the Muslims do live here, and Muslims also have celebration. So with MSA, we put up a 15-feet big crescent moon with a star that lit up Tempe for 1 whole month during Ramadan. We also did a faith and football discussion. The NFL thing was there last year in February 2023 this year. And we have a retired NFL player, Hamza Abdullah. Hamza Abdullah and Matt Ware, a Catholic, came together and we had a discussion and an interfaith discussion of how sports and religion can come together. So these are some of the outreach activities we have done. We are doing another outreach this year during Ramadan for community dinner, to do an interfaith dinner. We are also doing various other things with community right now, and as they will take shape, we'll be able to talk about that. As scholars or as teachers, our work is really research. So we have started several research projects. One of the projects that we are doing is actually developing a toolkit for journalists, so that the journalists can have narratives about Muslims that is positive and not these negative narratives. We are working with Aligarh Muslim University and in Sweden with one of the universities there and ASU to put together this toolkit for journalists, and particularly developed by youth. These are students from these 3 countries that will be working together. 30 students are working together to build a toolkit with the help of professors who teach in journalism. We have started, I hosted, some of you may know of him, Sheikh Hakim Abdul Hakim Murad, Timothy Winter. He's a professor in Cambridge University. He came to ASU in September to give the peace talk and talk about the impact or the importance of arts in the Islamic world, and particularly among Muslims, and the kind of transference of idea from the Muslim world to the Western world. We also had a large workshop, an international workshop, where we invited people from Germany, from Spain, from Italy, from Austria, and the United States to talk about the place of Muslims in Western democracies. We are expanding that work to also include Asian democracies, particularly focusing on India, where the place of Muslim has today become very tenuous. So we are doing this research project to understand the place of minorities, Muslim minorities, in democracies. And trying to address it that democracies actually do not provide an equality that it sort of says it does by looking at the case of the Muslims. Others can also take on, other minority communities, other marginal groups can also learn from this case study that how do you include marginal people in the so-called thriving democracies. So that is the big project that will go on for several years. We have a network of global scholars. But one of the very interesting things that we are doing, and I'm particularly excited about it because it is a historical project. You may not think of Arizona as a place of Muslims. Arizona has an incredibly interesting history when it comes to Muslims. Here is, as you can see, a lot of markers from different graves, which was from the Muslim Association. This is in Phoenix, Arizona. And there are 26 graves here with their gravestones. From 1950, the first one, going all the way till 2023. These were very early Muslims who came. The person on the right that you see standing is Mubarak Ali Khan. And some of you should really remember this name, because people like you and I have become citizens of this country because of the work of this man. He came from UP in 1923 to the United States, and in 1937 moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And from 1937 to 1946, he single-handedly worked to ask for the repeal of the Exclusion Act that was put in place in 1924 that meant that brown people could not become citizens of this country. It was only black and white people who could be citizens. Brown people were excluded from citizenship. Mubarak Ali worked relentlessly by creating an organization called India Welfare Association, gave 8 congressional hearings, worked with many governors and senators and congressmen and name what you may. And in 1946, that act was revoked, the Exclusion Act was revoked, and brown people, South Asians, were allowed to become naturalized citizens of this country, by which you and I and many of us who were not born here are today citizens. We need to remember Mubarak Ali Khan and all those 26 people who are buried with him who have worked for us. So this is a project that we're doing. I may be even writing a book on this. Once I do complete the history, I'm doing oral history with the survivors or the children and the grandchildren of these families. And they are spread all across the United States. So we're trying to gather the stories of what was it like to live as a non-citizen in the 1930s and 1940s in so-called, America that was even at that time emerging to be one of the largest and the most important countries in the world. So this is some of the work we did in 1 year. We will now move on to talk about very quickly of the work we are planning to do in the next couple of years, and then we will wrap it up.